As an individual sales rep, sometimes we may get lost focusing on the account. And we know account-based marketing and account-based selling is critical. We still have to run those motions. However, we need to make sure the messaging is tailored to individual people. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about how your organization can help you. And if you're the organization leadership, how you can help your individual contributors accomplish this. Check it out. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And my guest today is Joe McNeill. You've got to go and connect with him. You can find his information here on in the show notes, but you can find him on LinkedIn. And Joe's doing some amazing things as a chief revenue officer in his organization, specifically working and supporting sales teams and rev ops teams so that they can make sure that they're doing the things that they need to ensure their team is being very intentional so they can see the right growth and right success. We're going to tap into some cool stuff that they're talking about here today. I mean, like so often we find that sales reps run into troubles and the sales leaders say you just got to put more on a fire, more prospecting, more phone calls, more emails, when in actuality, that's not necessarily the best way of doing it. And we're going to tell you why and how you can go about making a change today. If this is your first time listening to our podcast and you're passionate about building more pipeline, a more effective pipeline, and actually converting more of that pipe, this is the right spot. Subscribe to this podcast. Tell someone else about the show so they can find success with it too. As we dive in, you get a chance to learn a little bit more about what Joe does on a day-to-day basis and how they support teams and individuals like you. Let's check it out. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thrilled to be here, Donald.
Man, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to chat with you and to dive into this conversation. Essentially, there's a lot more that we can do as organizations to help our frontline folks to make sure that they're being the most successful possible, especially when it comes towards focusing on the human side, helping the individuals in an organization, our prospect, rather than just like amorphous account. And I'm looking to pick your brain on that. But before we dive in, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you do, man?
Yeah, so Influ2 helps drive sales efficiency. Essentially, we do hyper-targeted digital ads supporting sales. People like to think of us more on the marketing side, but really we're supporting sales as another touch point to increase prospecting conversion rates and then help AEs multi-thread their opportunities and drive conversion and sales velocity.
Man, I like that. You're singing the sweet music to my ears. This is sound good. Because of challenge that we're finding right now, I was in a conversation with my friends over at LinkedIn, and one of the things I've been talking a lot about this, that they said that email outreach has increased by 50%. This is from a Gartner study since the pandemic, while replies have decreased by 30%. And a lot of folks, when things are not going so great, they just figure toss more fuel on a fire, man. Just do more. Put more emails out there, BDRs. But I feel that there's more that an organization can do to help their team to be more successful on it. So I want to pick your brain on that a little bit. So let's just dive in real quick. What can we do? How can we improve this overall? I know there's 3 main points that we talked about. Do you mind highlighting those 3 points and then we could dive into each of them?
Yeah. Just to provide context, I mean, you're exactly right. It's kind of the perfect storm in the sense that a lot of companies were driving inbound funnels and product-led growth last year, and the market was great, right? The market has gotten tougher. And with that, inbound funnels are people aren't hitting their goals there. They're not hitting their goals through product leads, through PLG, and almost everybody's doing outbound now. Now, the issue is they have less resources to do outbound. Marketing has less resources to support outbound, and their buyers have less resources to consider solutions. And it feels like everybody's kind of running off the same sales development playbook in a way and running these sequences. And, a lot of times I was at the Pavilion CRO Summit last year, and I think the stat they said is that 72% of SDR teams are not hitting pipeline quota right now. And from a leadership standpoint,
repeat that one more time for people in the back. What was that? 75%?
72% of SDR teams are behind their pipeline goal. So what do you think leadership's idea is to catch up when you're behind pipeline goal? Yeah, more, right? More. I got an idea. More calls, more emails, right? Do you think the more calls and the more emails are more quality? or do you think it's volume, volume, volume? Yeah. So I saw a SalesLoft note that volume has never been higher and conversion's never been lower. So it's basically what's out
Yeah.
there right now.
Can I share one thing real quick? One of my friends was saying he was working with a team, and the sales, he was curious. Actually, it was John Barris. Go back to John on his podcast, and he said one of the things that he noticed this team was doing. These reps just had like some like a dummy number that they were putting into their phone, and they were like, he's like, bro, what are you guys doing? Or something to this nature. But they're saying, yeah, we just put this in because it helps us to be able to hit the number to show that we made a call or whatnot. So they're making the outbound calls, but why using this fake number? It's dumb.
Yeah. Well, that's just a product of a team that's demoralized, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, I'm not going to hit my goal anyway. So why don't I just, go through the motions here so people get off my back? So I think,
Yeah.
and to be frank, I'm not throwing shade. Like, I get why leadership is doing this. Not that it's the right answer, but they have to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, in my opinion, intentionality is the right answer right now. Don't do more. Figure out where you're winning and hyper focus on that, right? And so from my standpoint, what I was going to talk about is I think part of the problem is just how teams are measured. So I think at a leadership level, if you're running off the same KPIs and playbooks that you came into this year with, and you're not hitting your goal, you're probably doing it wrong. Because like last year, the market was never better. We're in a different world now. It's time to pivot. It's time to audible. It's time to change what we're doing. So I think part of it is they feel stuck into this because it's how they're being measured from the top down. So I think, we all have to drive that conversation. And from there, it's just intentionality. And it's really, how do we all support each other, right? Because right now, teams are spinning up these outbound teams to hit the pipeline delta, but they're not supporting them, right? And if you're an SDR right now without marketing air cover, without support, without organizational support, you are in big trouble. If you're an AE right now without organizational support, you're in trouble. So from my standpoint, it's the recognition that, companies don't buy, people buy. And everyone,
So
go ahead.
Sorry, I cut you off when I thought there. You were just right in mid-sentence.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and people buy, not companies, and those people are facing the same challenges we are. So we can take a more human approach to how to move forward with a go-to-market that taps into that we're going to be more successful.
The notion you said, like support, and I just want you to go deeper on that. AEs and BDRs, they need to make sure they're working in the company with support. But can you define that a little bit more? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, when you look at go-to-market, especially in tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the marketing resources and most of the marketing support is driving new pipeline leads, right? And that isn't to say, a lot of companies have customer marketing, they have other forms of marketing. But if you look at those investments and resources relative to the demand gen lead machine, you'll see the lead machine's way bigger. And my view is we need to get away from this siloed approach to pipeline generation and demand gen and just look at how does marketing warm and engage with their target personas, target buying groups, to support the SDRs as well. How do they, we know right now that the amount of stakeholders in a buying decision is continually going up since COVID. I think it was, around 7 people, the average amount of people in a deal now. So we know that multi-threading deals is like the number one driver of conversion rates for AEs. But the problem is that's almost solely the AE's responsibility right now. They don't get a ton of support from their leadership or their team or their marketing in order to do that. So we just have to look at ways to support our front lines and support these drivers of pipeline conversion and revenue conversion.
Can you give some more of those? Like, one of the note I had here is being specific to the buying group, and not just like the account. What's in it for me, kind of for the buyer? How can I pivot towards that as an individual contributor?
Yeah, so I think that's messaging that resonates with the individual, right? So if we I just mentioned there's around 7 people involved in a buying decision, right? All of those 7 people are probably getting something a little different out of a purchase, whatever that purchase is,
Mm-hmm.
right? The user is probably more of a, how does this help my day to day? The, C-suite, the executive buyer is more, what is the bigger picture? How does this drive growth, scalability, efficiency, whatever that is for the C level? And then there's the, procurement, legal, IT, whatever. It's like, what impact does this have on our overall stack? What impact does this have on our risk? What does this have on whatever? So everybody has a little bit of a different perspective on what a vendor is going to do for them, and you need to message them accordingly, right? If you bring the user business case to the C-suite, not going to resonate. If you bring the C-suite user, business case to the user, not going to resonate. So we need to figure out how to tap into, help me help you, and tap into the individual in the buying group.
Dang it, Joe, you're trying to give me more work though, bro. This is that's like different cadences I have to create and stuff, but I just want to send that one blast, bro.
The reality is it's pretty scalable though, right? Because there's a lot of
Yep.
commonalities between those individual stakeholders. So I think if you go
Okay.
through, a persona map and you look at the most common messages and just the most common challenges, and the reality, when we talk about multi-threading, if you think about it, like, you don't need to turn everyone to a green light in most cases. You just, if you have any red lights, you need to move those to yellow lights, and you need to have as many green lights as possible. You need to find your champion that's going to push this through and really be honest with you on what the risk is.
Love it. With that, then, so because that messaging more than likely can the C-suite at any of the organization probably going to be in the same area if I'm focusing on a niche. Same problems. Maybe I need to tweak it just a little bit, but you're telling me like that's how I need to focus on my messaging. And then I think the other part with the support is that now as RevOps, I'm not doing this alone as individual contributor. Is that I have RevOps that's probably helping me with this. I'm getting the right support, right? Intel.
Yeah. It's really, it's hard to speak in generalities because it's really product dependent, right? But, I think it's being adaptive, right? Like the messaging that you were sending out Q3, Q4 of last year to the C-suite, to the users, different than this year, right? Last year was growth at all costs. So you had to tap into, you need us to grow at all costs if that's who you're selling to. This year is, people used to think of, what should we focus on, growth or efficiency? Now it's efficiency is growth. Like, you got no choice.
Dang, bro. That's so true. That's like profound. Need to make that a click to tweet, y'all. Efficiency is growth. And I think one other place too that I find in our team's efforts, and I'll go back to this, is we utilize, like, there's certain things that you might have on that automation route, like say your emails. One thing that our team does, and I'm very proud of them for, is go back to what you were saying here, is being specific to the buyer and personalizing towards those individuals. So we use text message as well, not a blast, but individual text messaging. We get direct dials, utilize LinkedIn, and then obviously like the phone. And when those areas combine, I find that our sales teams are able to, take some of those little personal, things and make that a little bit more focused towards the individual, whether that's something that they've shared or whether that's something that one of the leaders said in a podcast or whatnot. But that's the level where the details can come in. And that's been able to help us to individualize it, so to speak, and focus on what's in it for me that with them.
Yeah. When I mentioned everyone's running off somewhat of the same playbook, differentiation matters right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, anything you can do to stand out from the crowd. You could have the greatest email copy of all times, but if you're just sending emails, most of them are never even getting read, right?
Bro,
so how do you get a little bit of attention from that person? And you need to be creative. You hear people looking at their performance, they're like, no, we don't make calls anymore because people aren't in offices and it's impossible to get a hold of people. And it's like, well, let's look at your sequence performance on people that you left a voicemail for versus ones you didn't. I bet it's higher, right? Because the phone is trading low right now. I don't get very many calls. I get a bazillion emails. So there's that. There's, direct mail, there's the text, there's the videos, there's there's all kinds of stuff you can do to differentiate. And you only have bandwidth to do that if you're very specific in who
Yeah.
you're going after.
Yeah. Oh, couldn't be more true on that, man. Um, I I think we could, if we could do a whole episode just on that topic, just like on what's in it for them. And I think you kind of mentioned this already, but I feel like even more so nowadays, like from our conversations, buyers don't want to get caught with their hands in a cookie jar doing something wrong. From at least from my perspective, because things are tight in organization, nobody wants to make a wrong decision, but I can also come across as a hero doing something really good. And can you, as an individual contributor or organization, help me do something good for the organization? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And those people are unique. The people that are looking for, they're looking to solve the problem. There are people that,
Hmm.
when things get tough, they kind of go in a shell and they don't want to make any mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And you need to identify people as such. And I think the reality is too is even when we're talking about prospecting, we're talking about vendors, we're talking about anything, like I think recognizing that you have to be pragmatic with your messaging, right? Too many vendors, too many leaders talk about strategies and solutions as like the panacea, the silver bullet, like if you do this you'll
Hmm.
win. And the reality is, like, it's a grind out there, but every inch counts. And so, like,
Yeah.
if you start sending videos or doing the texting you're talking about, like, you're suddenly not just going to start converting meetings hand over fist. But you know what, if you get an extra point of conversion, that scales. So
Yeah.
you just got to look for all of those little changes, those little iteratives. And the reality is, if you're talking to a prospect and you can help them incrementally, but in the main area of focus for them, like, that's a big win, right? So just working together on coming up with pragmatic guidelines and pragmatic thoughts about how we can help.
Love it. The one of the areas that we and I talked about, you gave some you said you had some examples of how RevTech can really help in this process. Do you mind giving us a little bit more about that? What do you feel?
Yeah, so I think, we talked about efficiency as growth, right? And we talked
Hmm.
about last year was growth at all costs. And the
Hmm.
reality is, growth at all costs can be great for an organization. It can kind of suck for an individual contributor, right? Because
Yeah.
territories being split, people being thrown in, all this stuff. The good news is it's tough out there right now. But if efficiency is growth, that's good for an individual contributor, because the company needs you to be successful, and then they'll invest in it. And for me, RevTech can really help. It can help really create efficiency with a person. If I'm a salesperson and I am great at taking a qualified meeting and turning that into revenue, the company should figure out how many meetings can that person handle in a day and a month, and we should move heaven and earth to get that person that many meetings
Mm.
by all means necessary. If you have a BDR that is amazing at converting prospects to pipeline, you should be feeding them prospects to call. Like, if they're spending time like, should I call Donald? Should I call Joe? Should I call this? If they're out searching for people to call, then they add them to this. That's a waste, right? So,
Yeah.
like, from a rev tech standpoint, from a process standpoint, companies can build this machine that can maximize people's time. They can maximize the amount of whatever they do best. They're doing that the most amount of time. And I think, a big one that people underestimate is the BDR one, right? Like, how much time do you
Mm.
spend training your BDRs how to find the people they should be calling versus these are the people you're going to call, convert them to pipeline. We're going to train you exactly how to have these conversations, how to message these people to turn into pipeline. And you're just, I say call, but run a sequence, whether that's text, a video, or whatever. But just you feed their outreach with who they should be reaching out to. It really simplifies everything.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree with you more on that. Given taking some of those administrative tasks out of the way for them, and giving them giving them the room to do what they need to do, give them, make them make them a little bit more successful with that. Um, the any other tips you have for teams that may just be, if there's a leader on here that's just kind of thinking, I love what you're sharing here, Joe, but I don't know where to start when it comes towards this. Any thoughts on what you can say or do for them, or any other
Yeah,
examples, any other case studies?
Yeah, I mean, I'd keep it even more high level. I think as a leader,
Sure.
sometimes we think we need to have all the answers.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, like your job as a leader is to help your team win. Doesn't matter whose idea it is, right? You got to bring in a consultant. If you got to go out and talk to a group of your peers, if you have to, use your network, use your resources, like you don't need to come up with the answer alone. That's not your job, right? This is an open book test. Your job is to win and help your team win, right? So like if you
Yeah.
need help, if you in your heart of hearts can't think of the right answer, then go out and start having conversations. There's companies out there that are winning. There's companies out there that are getting by. Like, there's no new ideas pretty much these days. So let's borrow some from our peers that are winning.
Love it. This is awesome. If folks out there listening to this episode want to connect with you to pick your brain, to be able to learn more from you, what's the best way for them to go about doing so?
LinkedIn is best. Joe McNeill on LinkedIn. That's I'm pretty active on there. So reach out to me on there. I will see it. Be advised, I do
Eh,
get 7 million connections a day, and then they immediately spam me with some sort of message. So don't be one of those people. But if you're a human being, you want to connect, I'd love to chat.
Here's and I know you don't do this. I mean, you had no intention of doing this, but I like what you guys are doing. But would you be willing to maybe give us like that 1-2 minutes commercial, talk about how can your tool help us to achieve this?
Yes. So I think if you think about why outreach is successful or sales loft, right? It's really
Hmm.
creating a process where you're touching a prospect with various different methods, whether it's calls, it's emails, it's LinkedIn, it's Vidyard, it's all these things, and then you create structure and you create data, and you're able to optimize the right way to do that to enhance conversion rates. We're just another touch point along the way. So essentially, we're the digital side of that. You create a campaign, you assign specific people to that campaign, and then we showed them digital advertisements, and then we feed back engagement data to that person's contact record. So really, we can help you as a sales rep. I think that the toughest challenge at times is, what should I do right now?
Mm.
Like, I'm sitting here right now, what should I do right now? And I think, for us, we can help that problem. I think Matt Hines said, all go-to-market motions come down to answering two simple questions: who to call and what to say. Right. And I think as an AE, sometimes it can be a little bit paralysis by overanalysis in, I don't know who I should call right now and what I should say to them. And we can help you with
Yeah.
that.
Love it, man. Money in the bank. Well, we're gonna put your stuff in LinkedIn. I mean, put your stuff in the show notes so they can connect with you on LinkedIn, and also the website so they can go and learn from you. Appreciate you taking the time breaking this down with me today, Joe. I know what I need to go do right now, so I appreciate that, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Donald. And I'll be over for Thanksgiving for some of the jerk chicken you talked about. So
Rude
I'll be
boy,
seeing you.
rude boy. All right, man. Look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, that was Joe McNeill. You can find out more information about the cool things that they're doing to help and support sales teams via the link in the show notes. Man, I'm just telling you, like the idea there of making sure you focus on the individual and individual need rather than just the account. It's a huge game changer. And I would love what you shared, that the things that you did last year can't be the things that you're running this year. I would say to some degree, the things you ran in Q1 can't necessarily be the things you're running right now in Q4 when it comes towards generating conversations. You got to make sure the messaging is tweaked and changed to the individual. If you love this episode, please go ahead and connect with Joe on LinkedIn. Also, please take this link and share it with one of the team members so they can find benefit from it, or your leadership team as well. As always, we want to help you to raise your level of thinking. We want to help you to build a stronger pipeline. We want you to be able to close more of that pipe. But we want you to raise your level of thinking and go out and do big things. Thank you so much for watching.